Welcome to this special prophetic moment. We invite you to be part of this historic time. Where are you watching from? Share your city in the comments below. This is a momentous time, and we want to know from which corner of the earth you are witnessing what's happening in Jerusalem. The air in Jerusalem vibrates with anticipation. Thousands gather at the Western Wall, their faces illuminated by the golden hues of sunset. The ancient stones, witnesses to millennia of prayers, stand ready for another sacred moment. Pilgrims from every nation pour into the narrow streets of the old city. Their footsteps echo on pathways walked by prophets and kings. The atmosphere is electric, charged with expectation and reverence. Children sit on their fathers' shoulders, straining to see. Elderly women wipe tears from their eyes, remembering ceremonies of decades past. This is not merely a gathering, it is a convergence of souls drawn to the spiritual epicenter of the world. The crowd continues to swell as the appointed hour approaches. White garments flutter in the gentle breeze, symbolic of the purity this day demands. You can feel it in your bones. Something profound is about to unfold in this ancient city. Security personnel move with practiced efficiency, their eyes watchful, but their spirits clearly affected by the solemnity of the occasion. Foreign dignitaries stand respectfully to one side, observers of a ceremony older than many of their nations. Rabbinical students whisper explanations to newcomers, hands moving animatedly as they describe the significance of each element. The temperature drops slightly as the sun dips lower, as if nature itself acknowledges the transition to this holy time. Birds circle overhead, their formations seeming almost choreographed against the deepening blue sky. Cameras from major networks position themselves strategically, knowing this footage will be broadcast to millions. Yet despite the modern intrusions, the ancient essence remains undiluted. Jerusalem prepares herself, as she has for thousands of years, to serve as the meeting place between heaven and earth. The sound comes first, a voice crying out across the plaza, "Prepare the way." The words ripple through the assembly, and a hush falls over the multitude. The appointed guardians of tradition step forward, their talitot draped over bowed heads. This is the moment Jerusalem has been waiting for. This is why they've traveled from the ends of the earth. The ancient call resonates across time itself. "Today," announces the elder, his voice carrying unexpected strength, "the prophecy is in our midst." The words hang in the air, heavy with significance. Smartphones raise in unison, capturing what many believe will be historic footage. The ram's horns are unveiled, each one meticulously prepared for this precise moment. The guardians take their positions, aligned with the cardinal directions. Heaven seems to bend closer, attentive to what transpires on this sacred ground. The world holds its breath as the ceremony that bridges millennia begins its solemn procession. The chief rabbi steps forward, his beard white as snow, eyes bright with the wisdom of decades spent in study and prayer. He raises his hands in a gesture as old as his lineage, blessing the gathering in the ancient tongue. His deputies move with choreographed precision, each understanding their role in this sacred drama. 7 shofars are now visible, their polished surfaces gleaming in the fading light. Each represents a different aspect of the divine promise, each will sound with unique significance. The elder guardians bow their heads, reciting prayers that have remained unchanged since the days of the temple. Their voices blend in perfect harmony, the Hebrew cadences rising and falling like waves against eternal shores. Children grow still, sensing intuitively that they witness something transcendent. Even the skeptics in the crowd find themselves affected by the palpable sense of holiness that descends. The boundaries between past and present blur in this timeless moment. Those with eyes to see understand, this is not merely ceremonial. This is covenant in action, promises being fulfilled before a watching world. What we witness today was foretold by the prophets of old. The gathering of the nations to Jerusalem, predicted in Scripture, manifests before our eyes. Zechariah's words echo through time, and it shall come to pass that everyone who is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to worship the King. Look around. Representatives from countries that once stood against Israel now stand in reverence. The ingathering continues, unfolding with divine precision. Ancient words become living reality in our generation. The convergence of global attention on this tiny parcel of land defies logical explanation. Yet here they stand, exactly as foretold. The shofar ceremony represents more than tradition. It embodies prophecy fulfilled in real time. The alignment of celestial signs with this sacred day cannot be coincidental. The ancient timeline, preserved through millennia of exile and restoration, continues its inexorable progression. Today marks another marker on the prophetic calendar, another promise kept by the guardian of Israel. Consider Isaiah's prophecy. I will bring your descendants from the east and gather you from the west. I will say to the north, give them up, and to the south, do not keep them back. Bring my sons from afar, and my daughters from the ends of the earth. Look at the faces in this crowd, from Russia and Ukraine in the north, from Ethiopia and South Africa in the south, from the Americas in the west, from China and India in the east. The prophet's words find their fulfillment in these very people. Consider too the words of Jeremiah, who declared, Behold, I will bring them from the north country and gather them from the ends of the earth, among them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, together with the one who labors with child. A great throng shall return there. Look at the disabled in their wheelchairs, positioned with honor near the front. Look at the pregnant women, hands resting on their swollen bellies, bearing the next generation of witnesses. Look at the elderly who labored through persecution to reach this promised land. The prophetic tapestry is being woven before our eyes, thread by intricate thread, exactly as foretold by those who saw our day from afar. Right now, as you watch this footage, history and prophecy intertwine, the ancient and the immediate collapse into a single moment. The ceremony unfolds not as a reenactment, but as a continuation of an eternal covenant. Those shofars, crafted from ram's horns, link us directly to Mount Moriah, where Abraham's sacrifice was stayed by divine intervention. They connect us to Sinai, where the sound of a heavenly shofar caused a nation to tremble. Now, in our time, these sounds pierce the spiritual atmosphere once again. The priests move with deliberate steps, each motion prescribed by tradition thousands of years old. Yet nothing about this feels archaic or obsolete. Instead, there's an unmistakable sense that this is happening precisely when it should, that our generation was appointed to witness this convergence. The golden light bathes Jerusalem in otherworldly radiance as the ceremony continues. Heaven and earth seem separated by the thinnest of veils at this sacred hour. The shofars are raised higher now, catching the last golden rays of sunset. Their curved forms cast elongated shadows across the ancient stones. Those closest to the ceremony report a subtle vibration underfoot, as if the very ground responds to these sacred proceedings. The air itself seems to thicken, becoming charged with expectation. Those sensitive to spiritual realities speak of seeing manifestations around the ceremony, pillars of light, winged figures at attention, a translucent cloud descending. Such reports will be dismissed by skeptics, yet even the most rational observers admit to sensing something beyond ordinary experience. Time seems to slow, each second extending into eternity. The ordinary boundaries of perception expand in this thin place where worlds intersect. What happens in these moments transcends the physical ceremony unfolding before cameras. It reaches into realms unseen, affecting balances and alignments beyond human comprehension. Yet something in our collective soul recognizes the significance. Something primal within humanity responds to this sacred awakening. Listen to the prayers rising from this multitude. Shema Yisrael, the ancient declaration of faith, rises from thousands of throats. A woman from Ethiopia stands with closed eyes, swaying in devotion. Beside her, a man from China lifts his hands in reverence. A family from Brazil embraces, overcome by the weight of the moment. The prayers ascend in Hebrew, English, Spanish, Russian, a reverse Babel, united in purpose. Next year in Jerusalem was their ancestors' longing. This year in Jerusalem is their grateful reality. Pilgrims who have saved for years just to stand on this ground weep openly. Those who have survived persecution to reach this moment stand resilient and tall. The collective yearning of generations finds expression in this sacred assembly. They have come because something within them, something beyond rational explanation, drew them to be here for this specific ceremony. Their presence fulfills yet another layer of ancient prophecy. I will gather them from the ends of the earth. An elderly Holocaust survivor, numbers still visible on her forearm, clutches a faded photograph of relatives who perished without seeing this day. A young couple from New Zealand holds their newborn son, his first journey being to this holy city for this sacred moment. A group of Native Americans in traditional dress stand solemnly, recognizing kindred spirits in these ancient traditions. Former enemies pray side by side. A Polish man whose grandfather was a Nazi officer stands beside the grandson of Auschwitz survivors. Miracles of reconciliation unfold in small, personal ways throughout the crowd. A Japanese businessman who came as a curious tourist finds himself inexplicably moved to tears. A group of African pastors hold hands in a circle, interceding with fervent whispers. Muslim observers watch from respectful distance, many visibly affected despite theological differences. The prayers continue to build, creating an almost tangible canopy over the gathering. Ancient words merge with spontaneous utterances, creating a symphony of devotion that transcends religious boundaries. This is unity that cannot be manufactured or legislated. It emerges organically from shared recognition of the sacred. The shofar is raised high, catching the last golden rays of sunlight. A momentary silence falls so complete you could hear a feather drift to the ground. Then it comes, the first blast, Tekaya. The sound pierces the evening air, transcending physical dimension. It speaks a language beyond words, resonating with the human soul at its deepest level. Shevarim. The broken, wailing notes follow, reminiscent of a heart crying out, Teruah. The staccato alarm awakens something primal within the gathered assembly. The sound travels across the Kidron Valley, reverberates against the Mount of Olives, and echoes back. One can almost visualize the sound waves spreading throughout Jerusalem, across Israel and beyond, a spiritual tsunami emanating from this ancient center. The final Tekaya Gedola begins, sustained beyond human capacity, carried by something more than mere breath. 90 seconds, 2 minutes. The note continues, defying physical limitation. When it finally fades, the silence that follows feels as sacred as the sound itself. Birds that had fallen silent during the blasts now resume their songs, but in different patterns, as if they too have been altered by what transpired. The elder who sounded the shofar stands transfixed, his own expression suggesting he witnessed something beyond the visible while the horn was at his lips. Those near him report that his feet seemed to hover slightly above the ground during the final extended blast. Such testimonies will be dismissed as religious hysteria by some, yet too many witnessed it to be easily discounted. The other shofar blowers now raise their instruments. The eastern shofar sounds, its tone slightly higher, representing mourning and renewal. The western shofar follows, deeper and more resonant, speaking of completion and fulfillment. The northern blast carries notes of judgment and purification. The southern shofar speaks of mercy and restoration. Together, they create a harmonic convergence that those with musical training describe as mathematically perfect, yet impossible to replicate with human instrumentation. The sound waves interact with ancient stones that have absorbed prayers for millennia, creating acoustic phenomena documented but unexplained by the scientific observers present. One thing becomes abundantly clear. This is no mere ceremonial reenactment. This is covenant activation at the deepest level, sending ripples through dimensions beyond our ordinary perception. Remember when these ceremonies were forbidden. Remember the centuries when no shofar sounded at these walls. Remember 70 CE, when the temple fell and the exiles began their long journey among hostile nations. Remember 1948, when a nation was reborn in a day. Remember 1967, when Jerusalem was reunified and the shofar sounded at the Western Wall for the first time in nearly 2,000 years. Remember those who died with Jerusalem on their lips, never living to see this day. Remember the prayers of generations, the tears shed in far-off lands, always facing this direction. Remember the promise that seemed impossible, that the scattered would return, that the desert would bloom, that ancient ceremonies would be restored. What you witness is not isolated from this continuous thread of memory. You stand, we all stand, on the shoulders of faithfulness that spans millennia. This moment honors their devotion and vindicates their trust in promises that transcend human lifetimes. Remember the Spanish Inquisition, when practicing these traditions meant torture and death. Remember the Russian pogroms, when entire villages were erased for maintaining these covenantal practices. Remember the yellow stars and concentration camps, the most recent attempt to ensure these ceremonies would never again take place. Remember the desperate journeys, on foot through hostile territories, on rickety boats across dangerous waters, on secret flights under cover of darkness, all to return to this ancient homeland. Remember the pioneers who drained malarial swamps with their bare hands, who made the desert bloom through revolutionary irrigation, who defended nascent communities with makeshift weapons. Remember the wars of survival against overwhelming odds, 1948, 1956, 1967, 1973, each one seeming to defy military logic with its outcome. Remember the ingathering from Ethiopia, from Yemen, from the former Soviet Union, modern-day fulfillments of ancient prophetic promises. This ceremony stands as testament to a faithfulness that spans not years or decades, but millennia. It speaks of promises kept across time frames that humble human understanding. It declares to a watching world that the Ancient of Days remains active in human history, working out purposes that transcend our limited perspective. Feel the weight of this moment. It presses upon the chest, fills the eyes with unexpected tears. Something transfers from the spiritual realm into the physical at the sound of those horns. Veterans of war stand at attention, moved beyond words. Skeptics who came merely as tourists find themselves inexplicably affected. The ceremony touches something beyond intellectual understanding. It reaches the soul. There is a gravity to these proceedings that cannot be manufactured or imitated. It carries the accumulated spiritual momentum of thousands of years. Those near the wall place their hands on the ancient stones, feeling vibrations that seem to emanate from within the earth itself. "Can you feel it?" they whisper to one another. Hardened journalists, who came to document objectively, find their hands trembling as they hold their cameras. This goes beyond religion, beyond tradition. It touches the essential fabric that connects humanity to its creator. The impact registers on faces of every ethnicity, every background, universal in its reach, particular in its covenant significance. A neuroscientist in the crowd monitors brainwave activity among volunteer participants. The readings show unprecedented synchronization across subjects, regardless of their religious background or prior exposure to the ceremony. Something is harmonizing brain activity across completely diverse participants, she reports with academic caution, masking obvious excitement. Medical personnel report unusual phenomena. chronic pain temporarily subsiding, symptoms of illness momentarily abating, heightened sensory awareness among normally impaired individuals. A blind man describes seeing light unlike any light during the final Tekiah Gedolah. A deaf woman reports feeling the sound throughout her entire body. Those with chronic fatigue suddenly find themselves energized. Those with anxiety experience unexpected calm. The atmosphere feels charged yet peaceful, intense yet healing. Something foundational is being restored, not just to this location or these people, but potentially to the created order itself. Those with prophetic sensitivity speak of thin places where the membrane between dimensions becomes permeable. Jerusalem has always been such a place, but during these sacred moments, the veil becomes virtually transparent. Heaven touches earth in tangible ways. What does it mean that you are witnessing this now, in this generation? Why has this ancient ceremony captured global attention at this precise moment in history? Consider the convergence of signs, technological, geopolitical, environmental. Consider how Jerusalem has returned to the center of world attention, just as prophets foretold. Consider how the impossible has become commonplace. Jewish people returning from the literal ends of the earth, speaking a revived ancient language, standing in a restored ancient homeland. These are not coincidences. They are waymarks on a divine timetable. The shofar has always served as heaven's timepiece, marking transitions, announcing moments of significance. Its sound today is both memorial and harbinger. It commemorates what has been fulfilled and heralds what approaches on the horizon. The wise observer understands this ceremony points to something far greater than itself. It is a shadow of things to come, a preview of a greater restoration still unfolding. Consider the mathematical impossibility of these events. Statisticians have calculated the odds of a people maintaining their distinct identity through 2 millennia of global dispersion without homeland, common language, or centralized governance. The numbers exceed trillions to one. Consider the linguistic miracle. The only successfully revived ancient language in human history, now spoken fluently by children who know no other mother tongue. Consider the agricultural wonder. Barren land that resisted Ottoman and British cultivation efforts now produces some of the world's most advanced agricultural yields and exports water technology to nations worldwide. Consider the technological eruption. A nation the size of New Jersey becoming a global leader in medical research, computer science, military technology, and space exploration. Consider the geopolitical anomaly. A country of 9 million standing resilient against hundreds of millions sworn to its destruction. Each of these developments alone would be remarkable. Together, they form a statistical impossibility that defies secular explanation. The shofar sounds in a land of miracles, calling attention to a divine signature written across modern events. Those with eyes to see recognize the handwriting. Those with ears to hear understand what the shofar proclaims. We stand at a pivotal moment in prophetic history, and this ceremony marks celestial time. This ceremony does not stand alone. It is one note in a symphony still being composed. Tomorrow, the faithful will gather again. Next month, another biblical feast will be honored. The cycle continues, not as mere repetition, but as progressive revelation. Each ceremony builds upon the previous, creating a spiritual crescendo across time. The prophets spoke of a day when these restored ceremonies would prepare the way for something greater. Today's events are neither the beginning nor the end. They are the crucial middle, the bridge between what was and what will be. The pilgrims understand this intuitively. That's why they'll return to their homes changed but not satisfied, awakened to greater expectation. Seeds planted in Jerusalem's soil will bear fruit in distant lands. Connections formed here will strengthen a global tapestry of faith. The ceremony concludes, but its impact has just begun to unfold. The priests carefully wrap the shofars, but their call continues to reverberate in hearts and minds. Nothing ends here. Everything continues from here. Consider the prophetic calendar unfolding with precision. Passover restored the understanding of redemption through blood sacrifice. Shavuot reconnected believers to revelation and divine empowerment. Rosh Hashanah reawakened awareness of divine kingship and coming judgment. Yom Kippur, as witnessed today, restores the reality of atonement and spiritual cleansing. Sukkot approaches, foreshadowing the ingathering of nations under divine tabernacling. Each feast, once dismissed as obsolete religious tradition, now pulses with renewed significance. Each reveals another facet of the unfolding redemptive narrative. Together, they create a prophetic roadmap, guiding those with understanding through the complexities of these transitional times. The ancient sages taught that when these ceremonies were restored to Jerusalem in their appointed times, the final act of the cosmic drama would begin its countdown. Those who study have noted how modern historical events align with feast dates with statistically impossible precision. Wars begin and end, governments rise and fall, technological breakthroughs emerge, all synchronized with this ancient calendar. Coincidence fails as an adequate explanation. A divine orchestration becomes the only reasonable conclusion. The ceremonies continue their progression, marking celestial time with earthly observance. The shofar has sounded. The next movement in the symphony awaits. The eyes of the world focus on this small plaza in an ancient city. Live streams connect viewers from Tokyo to Toronto, from Sydney to São Paulo. Comments in dozens of languages flood social platforms. "I feel like I'm there," writes a viewer from Finland. "Something is happening to our world," types another from Argentina. News networks that typically ignore religious ceremonies find themselves compelled to cover this event. "Unprecedented global interest," reports one anchor, struggling to explain the phenomenon. Diplomats and world leaders watch with measured interest, sensing the geopolitical implications. Scholars of prophecy hurriedly compare notes, identifying patterns and correlations. What happens in Jerusalem never stays in Jerusalem. It radiates outward, affecting nations and destinies. The spiritual broadcast from this ceremony travels faster and penetrates deeper than any digital signal. Those with attuned hearts receive it clearly, regardless of distance. The world is watching because the world must watch. Something primordial in human consciousness recognizes the significance of this shofar blast in this place at this time. Satellite data shows unusual electromagnetic activity centered over Jerusalem during the ceremony, spreading outward in concentric circles. Meteorologists report anomalous cloud formations appearing simultaneously over major cities worldwide at the exact moment of the final Tekiah Gedolah. Seismic monitors detect subtle vibrations originating from Jerusalem, traveling through the Earth's crust at speeds that defy current understanding of geological dynamics. Something physical has accompanied the spiritual. Intelligence agencies analyze social media response patterns, noting clusters of awakening terminology across platforms, languages, and demographic groups normally disconnected. Population behavior experts observe statistical anomalies in crime rates, hospital admissions, and consumer patterns in the hours following the ceremony's global broadcast. "It's as if human consciousness experienced a momentary reset," reports one researcher, requesting anonymity due to the implications of his observation. World religious leaders issue statements ranging from celebration to concern. Political figures measure their words carefully, sensing but not fully comprehending the significance of what transpired. What began as a ceremony in Jerusalem has catalyzed something global in scope and profound in implication. The prophets foresaw this, that in the last days Jerusalem would become a cup of trembling to all surrounding peoples. What transpires in this ancient city reverberates through the councils of nations. The final notes of the ceremony fade into evening stillness. Stars appear above Jerusalem, the same stars that watched over David and Solomon, Isaiah and Jeremiah. The priests bow in reverence, their sacred duty fulfilled for another year. But something has shifted in the spiritual atmosphere. Veterans of this ceremony whisper that this time was different. The crowds slowly disperse, but nobody rushes. They linger, reluctant to break the sacred spell that envelops the city. Tomorrow's headlines will attempt to capture what transpired, but words will prove insufficient. The true impact will manifest in changed lives, in renewed purpose, in awakened expectation. Seeds of prophecy, watered by today's ceremony, begin their quiet germination in hearts across the globe. Jerusalem has once again served as God's timepiece, marking another hour on the divine calendar. The shofar's call continues its journey, echoing through spiritual realms long after its physical sound has ceased. And so it has been, and so it will be, until all that has been spoken is fulfilled. The watchers remain at their posts. The faithful continue their preparations. The story, his story, unfolds with perfect precision. Jerusalem sleeps tonight under skies of unusual clarity. Those who remain after the crowds disperse report seeing celestial lights dancing above the Temple Mount, visible only to some. The Kidron Valley lies silent, ancient graves of prophets and kings, bearing witness to another fulfillment of what they foretold. On the Mount of Olives, small groups maintain prayer vigils through the night, sensing that heaven's attention remains fixed on this place. In homes throughout the city, the elderly tell the young what they witnessed, ensuring another generation carries the memory forward. In hotels and hostels, pilgrims record their experiences in journals and video diaries, knowing they've participated in something of historic and prophetic significance. Jerusalem breathes differently tonight, as if the city itself has been rejuvenated by what transpired within its ancient walls. The shofar is silent now, wrapped and stored until its next appointed sounding. But its message continues to echo, carried by those who heard and those who will hear from them. The circle widens, the awareness grows. Something ancient has awakened, something prophetic has advanced. The calendar page has turned to reveal the next chapter in humanity's most enduring story.